Success is not the byproduct of being seen, liked, or approved of by others. It's the outcome of sustained internal focus, an alignment between your goals, your values, and the systems you design to support them. The human brain is wired to seek validation. This is evolutionary. It used to mean safety, belonging, and survival. But in the modern world, this tendency has been hijacked by algorithms, likes, and comparison. The more attention you place on how you're perceived, the less energy you conserve for actual progress. From a neural standpoint, constantly seeking external validation activates the default mode network, the brain's self-referential system. It leads to rumination, overthinking, and emotional volatility. In contrast, internal focus activates the task-positive network, which governs goal-directed behavior, problem-solving, and deep work. This is where progress is built. You shift from consuming to creating, from reacting to initiating. The key is to direct your attentional spotlight inward, toward your process, your effort, your consistency. When that becomes your source of reward, the dopaminergic system begins to reinforce behaviors that lead to long-term gains rather than short-term approval. You no longer depend on likes or feedback loops to feel progress. Your brain begins to associate satisfaction with effort itself, not just outcomes. This is how people move from distraction to mastery. They stop outsourcing their identity and start engineering it internally, deliberately, through focused, repeated action. When you focus on yourself, on your own growth, discipline, and direction, you activate a very specific system in the brain, the long-term reward circuitry. This isn't just a motivational idea. It's a physiological process. The brain has two broad categories of reward systems: short-term and long-term. Short-term rewards are fast, shallow, and easily depleted. They're tied to things like scrolling, validation, impulsive pleasures, but the long-term reward system is different. It's more powerful, more sustainable, and it's the system that fuels real success. This system relies heavily on dopamine, but not in the way most people think. Dopamine doesn't spike just when you achieve something. It spikes most reliably when you move towards something meaningful. And the key variable is ownership. When the goal is yours, deeply aligned with your identity and values, the dopamine release is stronger, more consistent, and it drives you forward with clarity and energy. By consistently focusing on yourself, your inputs, your process, you're training your nervous system to value progress over outcome. You're literally changing what your brain considers rewarding, and this has massive implications. It means you can start to crave growth. You can build a feedback loop where discipline feels good, effort feels natural, and momentum becomes its own source of satisfaction. So the more you direct your energy inward, not in isolation, but in purposeful self-alignment, the more your biology supports sustained action. You begin to wire your brain for endurance, not just achievement. And that's what separates those who burn out from those who build. There's a powerful mechanism in the brain called attentional narrowing. It's what allows you to cut through noise, both internal and external, and lock onto a single task, idea, or goal with precision. This isn't just about willpower, it's a neural process. Your brain has limited attentional resources. When you try to divide them across too many inputs, performance drops, clarity fades, and progress stalls. But when you narrow your focus, your brain shifts into a high-efficiency state. Distractions lose their grip, and depth becomes possible. This narrowing is driven by selective engagement of the prefrontal cortex, which acts like a spotlight, illuminating what matters and suppressing what doesn't. The more you train this system, the stronger it becomes. Practices like deep work, consistent routines, breath control, and even visual anchoring all enhance this ability. Over time, you build the capacity to enter focused states faster and stay in them longer. When you focus on yourself, on a personal mission or daily discipline, you give the brain something stable to orient around. That stability lowers cognitive load and increases signal-to-noise ratio. You become less reactive, more intentional. It's not about being rigid, it's about becoming unavailable to distractions that don't serve your direction. This is how real change happens, not in bursts of scattered effort, but in sustained, deliberate focus. When attentional narrowing becomes your default mode, the world doesn't get quieter, but your mind does. And that's where breakthroughs begin. Self-focus isn't just about productivity, it's about building the internal architecture required for resilience, consistency, and elite performance. When your attention is anchored to your own progress rather than external outcomes or comparisons, you begin to regulate your own nervous system more effectively. This has powerful effects on how you respond to stress, pressure, and challenge. Resilience isn't a trait you're born with, it's a neural adaptation. When you train yourself to stay grounded in your own effort, especially during discomfort, you shift how your brain and body interpret stress. Instead of triggering panic or withdrawal, challenge becomes a signal to engage. This happens through repeated exposure to focused effort, workouts, cold exposure, deep concentration, or anything that demands your full presence. Over time, your threshold for discomfort rises. You become mentally tougher, but not through force, through structure. Consistency follows naturally. When your focus is internal, you're not constantly reacting to variables you can't control. You reduce cognitive fatigue by eliminating noise and make space for repeated behaviors that compound. Neural pathways get reinforced through repetition, and what once took effort begins to feel automatic. That's how habits become identity. Elite performance is simply the result of this process scaled over time. High performers don't just work harder, they control their internal state better, they recover faster, recalibrate quicker, and remain locked into their process while others chase validation or get lost in friction. It's not about being perfect, it's about showing up every day with clarity, presence, and an unshakable connection to your own purpose. That's what self-focus builds, and that's the real edge. Dopamine is often misunderstood. Most people associate it with reward or pleasure, but its real power lies in motivation, specifically the drive to move forward. What's critical to understand is that dopamine is not just released when you achieve something. It's released when you pursue something that matters to you. And that's the key. Intrinsic goals trigger a far more sustainable dopamine response than external ones ever will. When a goal is personal, when it's aligned with your values, your identity, your internal sense of purpose, the brain treats it differently. The dopaminergic system becomes more engaged, more consistent. You don't just get a spike at the finish line, you get a steady release along the way. That chemical signaling is what keeps you locked in, even when the process gets hard, even when results are delayed. You stop needing external rewards to stay motivated because the pursuit itself becomes neurologically rewarding. Now, compare that to chasing goals set by others, expectations, approval, image. The dopamine response is weaker, more erratic. It's harder to sustain momentum because your brain doesn't truly own the mission. You might start strong, but fatigue and burnout show up fast. The system wasn't built for that kind of motivation. So when you focus on yourself, on your goals, your internal compass, you activate a deeper, more durable form of drive. You train your brain to crave the process, not just the outcome. And when that happens, consistency becomes natural, effort becomes satisfying. That's when the system really unlocks. Not from chasing what's popular, but from committing to what's personal. Divided attention is one of the most silent killers of progress. It creates the illusion of productivity while actually fragmenting your focus and weakening your ability to perform at a high level. The human brain is not built to multitask. What it does instead is switch rapidly between tasks, and each switch comes with a cognitive cost. That cost is measurable. It reduces accuracy, increases mental fatigue, and slows down the depth of process. In other words, the more your attention is split, the further you drift from excellence. Your nervous system operates best when it's exposed to clarity, both mentally and environmentally. When you're in a chaotic environment, constantly exposed to digital interruptions, noise, clutter, or task switching, you activate stress responses that pull energy away from the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for focus, planning, and decision making. You become reactive rather than intentional. This lowers the signal-to-noise ratio in the brain, making it harder to lock in and stay there. But here's the opportunity. You can design your environment to support deep focus, morning sunlight to anchor your circadian rhythm, low distraction workspaces to reduce cognitive load, task batching to preserve neural energy, even something as simple as keeping your phone in another room during high-value work can improve output dramatically. These aren't minor changes, they're levers that allow your biology to work with you rather than against you. When you choose to focus on yourself, you're also choosing to protect the quality of your attention, because success isn't just about what you do, it's about how cleanly and consistently you do it. And clarity is the foundation of consistency. Progress is not a sudden leap. It's the compound effect of small, intentional actions performed consistently over time. This isn't philosophy, it's neurobiology. The brain adapts through repetition. Each time you engage in a behavior with focus and intent, you strengthen the neural circuits responsible for that behavior. Over time, those circuits become more efficient, more automatic. What was once effortful becomes identity. But for that compounding to occur, structure is essential. Discipline isn't about rigidity, it's about clarity. It's knowing when you train, how you focus, what you're moving toward. When your day is structured around clear intention, your nervous system calibrates to expect effort and reward in predictable rhythms. You reduce decision fatigue, you conserve mental energy, and you free up cognitive bandwidth for the work that actually matters. Intent is the force multiplier. If you go through the motions without presence, the adaptation is weaker, but when each action, each workout, each deep work session, each recovery window is done with full attention, the signal to the brain is stronger. You accelerate the process of neuroplasticity. You create real change, not just in behavior, but in the underlying architecture of your mind and body. This is why self-focus matters, because when you lock into your own process with discipline and intent, you create a feedback loop that drives consistent growth. And over weeks, months, years, that loop compounds into mastery. It's not dramatic, it's not loud, but it's unstoppable. The path to success is not found in noise, comparison, or external applause. It's built in silence, in structure, in deep internal focus. When you direct your attention inward, when you align your behavior with your values, and when you pursue goals that are truly your own, you activate systems in the brain and body that are designed for long-term growth. You don't just move forward, you evolve. This kind of self-focus isn't easy. It requires discipline, deliberate practice, and the willingness to be misunderstood. But it's the only way to build something real, something lasting. Success isn't a moment. It's a series of decisions, repeated, refined, and rooted in purpose. Focus on yourself until you succeed. Then keep going.